Families of the hostages taken by Hamas have just met with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. It's been almost 1 year since their loved ones were taken by Hamas in a terrorist attack. One of those Israeli-American hostages is Dekel-Chen, a husband and father of 3 who was taken hostage by Hamas following the October 7th attacks in Israel. His father, Jonathan Dekel-Chen, joins Top Story tonight live from the White House, where he attended that meeting with Jake Sullivan. So, Jonathan, first, thank you for talking to us. I know this is a difficult time for you. How did the meeting go at the White House?
Well, as all of these meetings have gone, and there have been many, which is really quite extraordinary, this time with the National Security Advisor, it was an eye-level conversation about where things stand, where the talks stand, what the obstacles are, what sort of the prognosis is, and a conversation and you know, putting out ideas about how perhaps we can all work towards expediting the process for both of the sides, unfortunately, to be forced, meaning Israel and Hamas, being forced to get to yes and to finish this negotiated process.
I want to delve a little deeper into those negotiations, but I'm sure you heard our report, and I'm sure you've been following the news. As I look at your live shot right now, I see that you are wearing an Israeli and U.S. pin there on your lapel. And I point that out because I know you know that Israel has to defend itself. But as the father of someone who is still being kept hostage by Hamas, how have the explosions in Lebanon against Hezbollah, how have you taken that news?
Well, look, at face value, I don't think anyone is going to miss these Hezbollah militants and the supporters of an internationally recognized terrorist organization. That needs to be said. Whoever executed this coordinated attack, at the level of being a father of a hostage and someone from a kibbutz near Oz, from which 29 of the 101 hostages still being held by Hamas are from my kibbutz. This is all deeply, deeply personal. Before and after these attacks in Lebanon, we were witness to just any number of actions, of unnecessary words from both sides, both Hamas and the Israeli side, which are making completion of this negotiated process that much harder. And at the same time, of course, the risk now of escalation into a regional war where no one wins and the United States will find it very difficult to stay out of, as well as other major powers, is certainly a worry. It's a worry from the level of my son all the way to sort of the future of our region. The only way it can be diffused, and anyone who knows the region and knows the issues at hand, the only way that this escalation can be diffused is by Hamas and Israel reaching an agreement to stop the madness in Gaza. But that is contingent on all of the hostages coming home, something that Hamas could have done starting on October 8th in order to relieve the suffering of the people of Gaza, but is yet to do so.
Jonathan, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we reported that the Biden administration was considering going at this alone and trying to get the American-Israeli hostages like your son out of Hamas's captivity. Is this something you still understand is happening, where they would just negotiate directly with Hamas and maybe a third party and take Israel out? Where does that stand?
Well, I know that the report initially came out on NBC News, and I spent the subsequent day in Israel saying out loud in Hebrew that there was really nothing to this report. The Biden administration, we've been in contact with them really almost constantly at the highest levels since mid-October. There was never any intent to negotiate just for the U.S. hostages. The 7 remaining, or when there were as many as 10, the U.S. administration, as far as I understand, is completely committed to getting out all 101 hostages, the 7 Americans among them. And, you know, that's where things stand. They stood that way before your report and after your report.
Are you frustrated? Is that something you would be open to, or is that something you do not want to entertain?
It's something that I'm not going to discuss. It's, you know, we know that this crisis must end. As an Israeli American, you notice the lapel pin. I'm committed, like all the other hostage families, to getting them all home. You know, when Hamas attacked on October 7th, massacring 1,400 Israelis, committing mass rape, mass hostage taking. They didn't check people's passports. They murdered people from 24 countries that had multiple citizenships. They still hold citizens from, I believe, 22 countries. So there should be no differentiation between U.S. citizens or anyone else. We have the privilege, the now 6 families who were in the meeting today, we have the privilege of being U.S. citizens, that we have access to the U.S. administration and Congress. And thus far, we've had absolute commitment and absolute solidarity wall to wall around the need to get all of the hostages home. It's clear that the problem is not the U.S. administration. The problem is, first and foremost, Hamas, which at this point is even refusing to negotiate in good faith, and the Israeli government. But I do believe that given the mass support in Israel, and witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people getting out into the streets in Israel, that the Israeli government, the people of Israel, with some help from the United States, will force our government to yes, but Hamas has to move, and it has to be forced by the international community. Anyone who considers themselves a friend of Palestinians, because the only way that killing stops in Gaza and perhaps beyond is by getting this deal done and returning our hostages.
Jonathan, before we go, the first time we met was on this show, and it was 11 months ago. It was 10 days after the October 7th terror attack. And I have to ask you, as a parent, how are you keeping hope?
Well, Rachel Goldberg, who is the mother of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was murdered, who was executed by Hamas a couple of weeks ago. His body was returned with another 5 beautiful young Israelis, has said that, hope is mandatory. And, I get up every morning and try to figure out what is the best thing that I can do to get my son back to his now 4 beautiful girls. His wife, who at the time of the attack was 7 months pregnant, gave birth, thank God, to their 3rd daughter, who Sagi has not yet met. That's my mission in life, and I'm sure every other family of hostages, those who unfortunately have already been murdered, and certainly those who are still alive, that's what keeps them going day in and day out, is the drive to get them home and to end the madness.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.